On YouTube, working on a 2014 Chevy Cruze LS with a 1.8 liter, and this customer here is having a coolant problem, meaning that she's always adding coolant once a week. So let's diagnose and find out where the leak is coming from. Before we use any tools to pressurize the cooling system, I first want to do a visual check. Now, this the coolant reservoir. It looks pretty bad, like it was leaking before. Could probably been someone just filling it up and didn't, clean up after when they were filling up the cooling tank. But right here, this area right here, I see wetness. So it's all wet. Obviously, this is probably a coolant problem right here. This right here on a 1.8 liter is the thermostat housing and are common to leak around 100,000 miles. This is something that I'll be concerned. Hoses look pretty good. This part of the radiator looks pretty good. Let's go to the passenger side front area. This is a concern right here. Take a look at the coolant residue along the side of the radiator, and that's a major concern. That's a sign of a water pump leaking. The water pump is seeping out the coolant, and the pulley is splashing the coolant to the radiator area. You also notice the coolant residue up right there at the timing cover. So that's the water pump right there, and we're not going to replace it today. The customer doesn't have enough money to replace that. It's a slow seepage, but it is still a concern, and we will take care of it later. So now let's pressurize the cooling system. First, I want to see on the radiator cap what's the pressure, the max pressure, and if you can see, 20 psi. So I'm going to pressurize this cooling system to 20 psi. So I'm using this adapter here. If you've seen my previous video on my review on the coolant tester kit, so it's this rust looking yellow or amber looking color. This works well, this adapter, in the coolant reservoir. Next, we will install the pressure tester and pump until the gauge reaches to 20 psi. The coolant system is pressurized. Now let's look for leaks. Since the thermostat housing has an obvious leak, I want to stay focused in this area. Let's take a look down there at the bottom. I'm going to place my flashlight, and you can see coolant accumulating there at this cavity. So that's a sign that we have a problem with the thermostat housing area. You will notice a drip of the coolant underneath the thermostat housing, a for sure sign of a cracked thermostat housing. While the cooling system is still pressurized, I also want to check on the side of the radiator and make sure there's no visible leaks. Let's also inspect the lower radiator hose area and where it connects to the radiator. So far, no leaks are found along the radiator side and also the lower radiator hose. Before we start to drain the coolant, we have to lift up the vehicle. Always use good quality jack stands and also a good floor jack. Okay, now we have to remove this undercover. Okay, we have to remove these fasteners here and also here. So if you're wondering how to take them off, just get a screwdriver and pry down the tab. I have these special plastic tools. They're very cheap, like $5, and just pull it out, and then now you can remove the actual insert. Now we have to do the other ones the same way. Okay, so to remove these screws here, we have to use a Torx 10 T10 and a 1/4 inch ratchet. Alright, last one, or last screw to remove, and we should be able to remove this cover. There we go. Okay, so it's on the passenger side front area, and there's a drain plug. So we're going to unscrew this so we can remove all the coolant. Remember, radiator cap or the coolant reservoir cap is removed, so you want to make sure that's removed so that the flow can come out easy from the drain valve here on the radiator. Okay, I couldn't find a hose, but I don't want to really make a lot of mess. So I found this, an elbow from a PVC pipe. I'm just going to put it there so I can route the coolant to the drain pan. Let's see if we succeed with that. There we go. Gotta improvise sometimes. That's why technicians are very intelligent. Okay, wow. The coolant system is draining. Let's get to these plugs here. So this is the plug for the upstream O2 sensor. We'll remove that. Okay, that's removed. We'll just leave it to the side. Now, next we're going to remove this bolt right here, or nut right here, to remove this bracket. And get it out the way. Remove this temp sensor plug. And now we can just put it to the side. We have more access now. Next, I want to remove this hose up here. Now, it has a special fitting, but it's really easy to do, to remove. So what we have to do is I'm going to use a screwdriver. It makes it easier for me. And I'm going to press into the fitting. This unlocks the coupler so that I can pull it out. Okay, now we're going to this back area here. I'm going to do my best to demonstrate while I'm holding the camera. And I'm going to pull the clip out. Now I can remove. Oh, it's a sensor, not a hose. So it's a sensor. Now it's time to remove the clamps for the radiator hoses. And you can use pliers, you can use channel locks, the angle pliers. You can get by with that. It makes it more difficult to remove these type of clamps, but most manufacturers use those type of clamps. But I purchased this set right here. This cost me like $51 in Amazon. I'll put the link down below on the comments, and if you're interested, they're right here. I'm not affiliated to this manufacturer. I'm just trying to help out people. But I'm going to use these pliers here to remove this clamp. There we go. Take a look at this lower tube right here, this middle tube. We need to remove that right there. So this tube is coming from the water pump and attaches to the thermostat housing. While the thermostat housing is still attached to the head of the engine, we're going to break loose the bolts that secure the metal tube. I'm going to be using an E10 socket. This same socket will be used to remove the bolts out of the thermostat housing. And I'm just going to use the extension in the socket to take out the bolts. These are short bolts as well, so they're not long. Now onto the heater hoses. We have 2 of them in the back area. Took one heater hose out. We got one more to go. This one's harder to get to, so I'm going to remove the whole block here. And once I remove it, now I have easy access to get that hose off. Or pump outlet assembly. We're using an E10, kind of like an inverted torx, if you will, but it's a special socket. Again, it's E10. Okay, I can't get any access to that. I may have to remove this clip right here for the transmission shifter. Okay, I'm going to use a small pry bar to help me remove this insert off its position here. There we go. And unlock this area here. Well, actually, that's enough room. That's perfect. All we need to do is just get this out the way a little bit, give us enough clearance to get that socket onto that bolt. Let's see if we got it started. We broke it loose. It may feel forever to take out, but you can see. Okay, we got last bolt to remove. Alright, now we have more access to get this clamp out, this hose. Alright. Make sure your heater hoses are in the upright position because they'll continue leaking. And now we have to clean the surface off the block right here. You can see what I'm talking about. This part here. We'll clean that up, but don't use anything rough or coarse because this is aluminum. We just want to get rid of the dirt that's here. Okay, so there it goes, the old one. So it was leaking out of this area right here. Well, that's what it looks like to me. I was researching this vehicle and seeing that this was a common problem right here. But I want to show you something. So take a look at the new one. So this is not an AC Delco. This is actually a Dorman. Guys, I know Dormans suck. But in this case here, I just saw it as all aluminum instead of plastic. And I'm going to give this a try and see if this works really well. Got it through Advanced Auto Parts, and I'll put down the link below with the part number if you're interested in that. But I also will put the link down below for the AC Delco, the original OEM part. Yes, I know, I like using OEM parts as well. But in this case, I just feel like this might be a better part here. You can also see that the thermostat's inside as well. And it comes with the sensors. So it cost me like both sensors. It cost me like around $125. But I'm gonna give this a try and see if this is good. Let me know what y'all think if y'all use this part or if y'all have used one before. I'm gonna clean the surface. There we go. Now again, this is on the 1.8 liter. The 1.4 liter, the thermostat's actually where the water pump would be in this location from my research. Now I'm using a plastic scraper. I never want to use a blade. I never want to use sandpaper. I don't want to do anything to harm the metal here because this is a perfectly precise flat area, and I want to make sure that when I install the new part, it seals properly. Okay, this is what the new gasket looks like. It's not really an O-ring. See, it looks like an O-ring, but it's not. And I'll put the part number down below so you can, with the link, so you can know what part number that is. Anyways, just goes in like so, and it's ready. So I highly recommend to purchase this O-ring or this gasket here before you install the thermostat housing water pump outlet assembly. If not, it's gonna leak, and this is what happened to me. So that's why I want to let you know before you go any further with this job. Get this gasket here,
and also purchase this hose right, because it's going to break on you more than likely. Okay, couldn't give you footage to install this heater hose. I needed both of my hands and the camera was in my way, but you just gotta have a little bit of patience to install it. But to me, it seems like it's easier to install the heater hose, the lower one, onto the lower port of this thermostat water pump outlet assembly, and then now we can mount the assembly to the head of the engine. I don't have a torque spec on this, but I'm just tightening them up, and doing this for such a long time, you kind of have a good feel for the right amount of torque. So we're doing bolts one more time. Yep, they all have the same amount of resistance. Yeah, we're good. Now to install the outlet tube. All right. So we got the first bolts already installed. Now let's install the radiator hose. Now remember, this with the clip that I took off the clip off the original one instead of just disconnecting, because it was easier for me to unplug the sensor out of the assembly. But now I can install it onto the new sensor. There we go. That one's already installed.
The fitting on this hose is broken, so I will demonstrate how to replace it later in this video.
Remember the bracket? This plug here that's on the bracket hooks up to the other temp sensor. And now we can secure the bracket.
Take a look at the new fitting on the hose compared to the broken old one, so you can see the difference. It definitely needs replacing.
In order to get to the hose at the throttle valve, I'm going to remove this intake tube right here. Now the lower clamp we have to loosen up, and then we can take out the whole intake tube. Now we have access to this hose, and we'll start removing this hose. Since I have the new hose, I'm just going to cut this off, slice it off, so I have better access to get to that clamp. The hose is already routed properly. You can see. harness right here already. No, the harnesses are all in the way. But there we go. You see it right there. Alright, so now let's hook up the... So now let's insert this hose onto the throttle valve. Now it's in place. And since I'm here at the throttle valve, I'm just going to clean it up real quick. I'm using throttle body cleaner. And in order for the throttle plate to open up, I placed a 10-pound sledgehammer and laid it on the accelerator pedal so that the computer can open up the throttle valve. I've already installed the intake tube that connects from the engine air filter to the throttle valve. Now let's connect the plug right here. Before we do that, there's an O-ring in there, so I'm going to lubricate it with some coolant. So before I insert this plug, I'm going to lubricate the O-ring. And it's already plugged up. It's good to go. Refill tool. I'm just going to put coolant in it and let it run, and then the air will come out of it. So this is a little bit easier system to fill up coolant with, you know. Okay, I'm going to start the car. So I'm going to let it run for a little while. I definitely want to make it go into operation temperature. So once that gets there and it's already in operating temperature, then I'm just going to verify for any leaks for around the repairs that I completed. Alright everyone, hope you liked this video. If you did, if you learned something from this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe. And also, don't forget, write some comments. I'll get to them as soon as I can. See you later.